Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of On Attachment. In today's episode, we are talking all about needs and specifically what to do if you're in a relationship where you're not getting your needs met and it's leaving you feeling unfulfilled or disconnected or unsatisfied and maybe even questioning the relationship as a whole. So this is one that, I think most everyone will experience at some point or another, but particularly folks with anxious attachment tend to have a really, really tough time with everything to do with needs, frankly. There's knowing what your needs are, identifying them, voicing them, advocating for them, and getting them met. It feels like from start to finish, it's a bit of a minefield and can trigger a lot of our fears and wounds and insecurities. And oftentimes we go about getting a need met in a way that's maybe ineffective. We do that from a wounded place and in an effort to protect ourselves against the vulnerability and the riskiness of putting ourselves out there and asking for a need to be met, we can almost encase our requests in blame or criticism or demand because that feels a little less edgy than really showing our more tender, vulnerable parts. And I do have an episode from a while back that I'll link in the show notes, which is around reasons why maybe you're not getting your needs met. And that episode talks a little bit more about different approaches that you might take in terms of how you communicate your needs and also things like difficulty in receiving that can be part of the puzzle when we're trying to understand like what's going wrong here, where are we not lining up in terms of our needs. But today's episode is going to be focused a little bit more on the specific question of like, how do I go about resolving that impasse where I feel like I've communicated my needs. We're going to assume for the purposes of this discussion that you've communicated them effectively enough and still I'm not getting my needs met. So that's really going to be the focus, giving you some insights, some things to reflect on, and hopefully some clarity around what your next step might be if you feel stuck in that kind of dynamic. Now, before we dive into today's discussion, a couple of quick announcements. The first is a little celebration. Last week, we reached a milestone with the podcast of 6 million downloads, which is really crazy. I mean, I know that probably just sounds like a big abstract number, but for a podcast that is independently recorded and produced and edited and everything from my home office, 6 million downloads is pretty wild. It is still something that I have to really pinch myself around. When I see this podcast in the top charts in pretty much every country in the world each week, in amongst all of the big names with a lot of powerful networks and backing behind them, it's really, really touching, humbling, and it is a great honor to be able to share this with you, as I say, from my little home office, for better or for worse. And so I have to thank each and every one of you, whether you've listened to all 178, I think, episodes we're up to now, or you're just dipping in for the first time or somewhere in between. It's really because of you and your support in tuning in and sharing it with the people in your lives that I'm able to keep putting the show out and that we've reached such an amazing milestone. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Second quick announcement, which is a celebration as well. Healing Anxious Attachment, which is my signature course, as many of you would know, is turning 3 next week. It's been almost 3 years since I first launched the program, which, for a little bit of backstory, was something that happened when I was totally overflowing with requests for one-on-one coaching. I had close to 1,000 people on a wait list, and it became apparent that was not going to be viable. And so I put together a course that distilled down everything I teach and coach people on and speak about and have learned from my own personal experience into a course. And that course was Healing Anxious Attachment. 3 years later, almost 2,500 people from all over the world. I think we've had people as young as 20 and as old as 70, as far as I'm aware. It could be more than that. Take the course from well over 30 countries. So it has really grown into something beyond my wildest dreams. And for that, I'm so grateful. And to celebrate the 3rd birthday of Healing Anxious Attachment, I'm going to be doing something I've never done before, which is offering the course for its original price, which is quite a bit less than its current price. Since I first created the course, I've fully updated it, re-recorded it, added to it. And for this birthday sale, I'm also going to be giving you exclusive bonuses, including my full masterclass library. So you're going to be getting 6 bonus masterclasses in addition to getting the course for its lowest ever price. So this is really one that is not to be missed. If you have ever thought about joining, now is the time. This is very much a once-off. I don't tend to run sales on healing anxious attachment because it is my signature program, and frankly I think it's worth every penny of its regular price, but I'm in the mood to celebrate, so that is what we're going to be doing. This deal is only going to be available to people who are on the wait list and only for 24 hours. So you're going to want to get on the list, and you're going to want to keep an eye on your inbox on the 16th of March. I will be very strictly enforcing those deadlines. So jump on the list. Link is in the show notes from my website. I really hope to welcome lots of you into the program as part of this special occasion. Okay, so let's get into this conversation around what to do when a partner is not meeting your needs. So here's what I see happen a lot of the time. When people who have anxious attachment patterns first come to this work, come to my work, come to me, what I'll often see is people not really knowing what their needs are. And if they have a sense of what their needs are, they don't really know if they're allowed to have them. And so there's this internal dialogue of like, I want more connection, but am I asking for too much? Or I want my partner to open up to me, but I'm scared that I'm being too needy. Or I have a sense that maybe my boundary is this thing, but I'm not sure if that's actually just my anxiety or I'm being controlling or whatever it might be, right? We have a hunch as to what our needs or boundaries might be, but we have such a lack of self-trust, and we're so unskilled when it comes to validating ourselves, and we maybe don't know that we are allowed to want the things we want or feel the way we feel or be uncomfortable with the things we're uncomfortable with. We're so unsure about that, and our internal foundation is so wobbly that the idea of standing really firm in our needs and then communicating them to a partner, that feels really challenging. And oftentimes people will work their way up to that and they might communicate it to a partner, but as soon as they get pushback, they crumble and they go like, oh, okay, if someone says that they can't do that or they won't do that or that I am asking for too much, I very quickly internalize that messaging and cower in the face of someone telling me that they can't meet my needs. And of course that doesn't feel very satisfactory because the needs are still there. Whatever feelings gave rise to that part of us that wanted to express the need and wanted to shift something in the relationship, all of that is still there. But now I've got this additional layer of feeling dismissed or invalidated or being told that my experience is not allowed or there's not space for it in the relationship. And so we can feel like we're in a bit of a quandary. We feel stuck in not wanting to let go of the relationship, feeling like we love this person and maybe feeling like there are good things that we do want to hold on to, but knowing that there are certain key respects in which we're not getting what we need and having some real doubt around, is it something that I'm doing that is stopping this person from being able to meet me in that? Am I asking it of the wrong person? Or is there some other thing that is getting in the way here that I'm not aware of? So that's sort of scenario one. Another version of this, which I also see a lot, is that people come across the work, they learn about the fact that they're allowed to have needs, they learn about how to speak up for themselves, and then they become demanding of their partner. And I often say to students and clients of mine that I think the language of need can almost be a little bit misleading in the sense that when someone figures out like, okay, these are my needs, and then they communicate it to a partner, it comes across with this energy of, because it's my need, you need to do this. Or I need you to do this, in the sense of you don't have a choice in the matter because I've identified this as being one of my needs. And if you don't meet my needs, then you are a bad partner or a bad person, and that's on you. So we can become a little bit entitled and righteous almost about the fact that we have to get our needs met. And that's part of the job of our partner, is to willingly meet all of our needs. And so I think that can be the other expression of this same wound, is we either get very small and almost like a little mouse and we might express a need, but as soon as we meet any pushback, we cower and we internalize the fact that we're not allowed to have needs. Or we get very big and we get very loud and we get very demanding and righteous and entitled. And if someone doesn't meet our needs, then we villainize them and we make it out as if like they're a terrible person because they're not meeting our needs. And I think in that scenario, we forget that they are actually their own person as well. And believe it or not, they also have needs and they also have limits and they also have a certain capacity. And it's not for us to dictate what they have to do. And this is where it gets really hard and we have to bring in some of the hard truths. And it's something that an insecure attachment mindset, whether it's anxious or avoidant or disorganized, people with insecure attachment tend to struggle with holding two truths. We tend to be quite black and white, quite binary, quite oppositional in the way that we think. It's very like good, bad, right, wrong, villain, victim. We're always trying to look for certainty in our thinking when the reality is that there's always more to it than that. There's always nuance, there's always shades of grey. And so the two truths that we need to be able to hold when it comes to this conversation and needs in relationship is you're allowed to have needs and your needs are valid and they're yours and they just are, right? If you've identified that this is what I need in order to feel okay in a relationship or to feel safe or to feel loved or whatever, like that's okay. You're allowed to have that. And you cannot demand that someone do what you want them to do in order to meet your needs or in order to make you feel a certain way. So both of those things can be true. And I think we struggle to hold that. We tend to go like, either my needs are invalid and that's why they won't meet them, so I'm not allowed to have the needs. Or if my needs are valid, then they have to meet them. And to the extent that they aren't, that's on them. And so I have to punish them or blame them or whatever, right? Both of these things can be true. The needs can be valid and someone can be unable or unwilling to meet them, okay? So if you get to that point and you've decided, yes, these are my needs and these needs are valid and I know them to be the things that I really need and value in a relationship and in a partner, and my partner is unable or unwilling to meet those needs, there are a couple of things that you can do next. One is to examine whether you are being overly rigid or prescriptive about how the need is met. And again, I think this is where some of our anxious attachment patterns can get in the way and can actually block us from getting our needs met, because the core need might be, I want to feel connected to you. But the way that we have come to understand the need and the way that we then communicate it to a partner is, I need you to text me throughout the day because if not, then I don't feel okay. And that's not really the need. Having someone text you all day, every day is not a need. Feeling connected to you, feeling like you're thinking of me, feeling important to you, feeling considered by you, those are really valid needs. But we need to bring in some flexibility around the how. And I think that oftentimes when we're being overly controlling and rigid and prescriptive about the how, that's where someone can go like, whoa, I can't do that. I can't give you what you need. You're asking for too much, right? And I think that can be fair enough when we are coming in with like this long list of things that can feel a bit overbearing. It can feel a bit unreasonable. So if you are noticing that kind of thing where you are being quite specific around like, I need you to do X, Y, Z thing every single day, and maybe you're being a little bit highly strung about that, to put it lightly, consider like, what is the core need? What am I wanting to feel? What am I telling myself that I will feel as a result of you doing this thing? And that will likely expose what the underlying need is, what's at the heart of this thing. And oftentimes it will be like, I want to feel important to you. I want to feel like a priority. I want to feel connected to you. I want to feel safe. I want to feel seen. I want to feel understood. And so if you can communicate those needs and certainly come up with suggestions for how your partner might go about meeting that need, because I think we can have different understandings. One person could feel really connected by doing one thing and another could have a totally different conception of what that looks like. And so we can be at a mismatch there. So offer suggestions, but be flexible as to the how, as to the solution for getting the need met. You're much more likely to get engagement from your partner when you're inviting them into the solution rather than dictating to them what they have to do in order to meet your need, in order to make you happy. Particularly, I might add, if there's a bit of a track record or a history in the relationship of you issuing these demands and then never really being satisfied or moving very quickly onto the next thing that you're upset or worried or insecure about, which we know can be a feature of anxious attachment, that we're always kind of raising the bar or moving the goalpost because we really struggle to take in that reassurance even when it is given. So being flexible and inviting your partner into the solution is likely to be much more effective in getting engagement than if you are just telling them about all the ways that they're not meeting your needs, about all the ways they're disappointing you, and then telling them very prescriptively like what they have to do. Otherwise, you won't be meeting my needs and I'm going to be angry or upset with you. That's not a very inspiring way of delivering the message. And so sometimes just changing our approach can actually get a lot more traction than we otherwise would. The other possibility, and of course this is the one that none of us really want to face, but it is always there and it is something that we have to be honest and realistic about, is that sometimes we are asking someone to meet our needs who is unable or unwilling to. And that's where we have to get really clear for ourselves on how important is this need to me? Is it absolutely fundamental, essential, non-negotiable for me in order to feel okay in a relationship, in order for me to thrive here? Is this instrumental to my sense of well-being and safety and belonging and security in a relationship? And if so, if it's been made very clear that our partner is not in a position to meet us there or to respond to the need in the way that would allow us to feel those things, then that might be where we have to look at whether it's a compatible partnership, whether we are asking for the right thing from the wrong person. And of course, there's a lot of grief tied up in making that assessment and coming to that conclusion, but that is a possibility, that there's nothing wrong with what you're asking. It's just who you're asking it of. And again, part of our growing is realizing that that doesn't make them a terrible person. It might just mean that they're not a great partner for you. They're not the best choice for you because your particular set of needs is not compatible with their capacity or what they are able and willing to give. And I know that people listening to this will have the follow-up question of like, well, how do I know if it's at that point? How do I know if we're like at the end of the road? And there's nothing that I can give you as a really clear rubric for figuring that out. That is one where we have to be honest and discerning. But I think if you are consistently met with someone's unwillingness or even clear communication as to their inability to meet a need, and you have communicated that clearly, probably over a long period of time, and you know for yourself that that need is not only non-negotiable, but it's one that you can't get met outside of the relationship. It's something that you really do need from your partner. Those would all be signs that maybe you are asking it of someone who is unable to give it to you. Okay, it feels like we're ending on a bit of a heavy note because I know that coming to that realization can be really, really challenging, and as I said, can bring up a lot of grief. But I think it can also be, in some respects, liberating to realize that we're not doing anything wrong. There's nothing wrong with us. Sometimes it's just not the right fit, and we can actually free both ourselves and the other person from the stress of putting effort in where maybe it's not going to yield what we're hoping for in response. Because I know from experience how very draining and even demoralizing that can be on both sides, to feel like we're just banging our head up against a wall and nothing's really moving the dial. So I hope that's been helpful in shedding a bit of light on what to do if you're not getting your needs met, different ways that you can approach that based on your situation, based on what you've tried, and maybe trying different angles or zooming out and looking at the relationship more broadly. As I said in the introduction, Healing Anxious Attachment, which is on sale next week, we have a whole module dedicated to this, but I would say the whole course really equips you with the tools and the self-knowing to make these decisions from a place of confidence and trust. And that's really what it's all about. It's not just looking at any one issue in isolation. It's building up our sense of self to the point where we feel equipped to navigate these sorts of tricky relationship questions with more self-confidence, with more self-esteem, with more self-trust. And that is really, truly liberating because we actually have our own back, oftentimes for the first time in our lives. Okay, so gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks so much.